What up, everybody? It's your boy, Pyro Slays Music, and today we're checking out Levi the Poet. Shout out to my boy, Aaron Wolf. He's the one that suggested this album to me. I have no clue what I'm getting into. I did see that, I thought it was said spoken word, writer and spoken word artist from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Okay, so that's interesting. I've not really listened to a whole lot of spoken word, and the stuff I have heard has been stuff like Black Flag, and there's a few other ones. I can't remember the one girl's name. I don't remember. But yeah, so there's a few examples that I have of spoken word under my belt, if this is a spoken word project. But I have no clue what I'm talking about. This is strictly checking this out because a friend requested it from me. And I also thought that'd be pretty fun for my friend group, who are typically the most, they support me a lot. So I try to spoil them when I can, especially my boy Aaron, because he comes over a lot, and he helps with Sound Discovery, and he's been involved with our publishing stuff. He's basically completely been with Chuck and me since day one. So that's like huge. He's kind of the hidden factor, if you will, because it was me and Chuck that started the publishing company. And then Aaron did a lot of heavy lifting for that, which I always really respect. And then, as we've done music, that's something he is interested in as well. So he's kind of been there like a silent partner in the background. Me and Chuckles are going to change that here soon, and we're going to make sure we get him involved in the company itself, because we really like this guy. And regardless if I love it or hate it, be sure to go out and support Levi the Poet. Buy merch, tickets if you can. If they're, I don't know if he does live shows or not, but you can always follow them on their socials and all the other stuff, right? So let's make sure we support the artist before we get into this, but we're going to kind of let this flow as best as we can. I'll try to keep my thoughts sparse in between tracks and then give you a full what I'm thinking towards the end. So let's go ahead and get in with chapter 1.
My love, when we first set sail and pushed off to sea, I stood at the bow looking backward, dry-eyed and imagining that the world in all its color and grandeur and majesty had been devastated by that same flood I'd seen when I told you that my father was making me leave. It was a midsummer night's eve, and in my heart it was a romance, the same Shakespearean tragedy, that quintessential teenage flickering that let love burn brighter in the reminiscent memories as we slowly fell asleep, cuddling beneath the stars that I wished upon through the cutout at the top of the teepee. It doubled by day as an Indian fort, with girls' have cooties stitched across the seams, and at night, our secret love affair that the cowboys would have deemed a crime punishable by catgun and sour faces and wild, wild west make-believe. Old enough to comprehend, but young enough to dream. I can still hear the rhythm of your breathing beneath that canopy, while the wind played brush on the snare and God threw his bolts of lightning like the thunderclap clave to complement the whistling moving through the trees. And remembered you promising that when we grew up, you'd build a home for me. Now to start growing, and you'd curl up your fake mustache like your favorite character in your favorite movie, whisper, I'll be a huckleberry. And in the morning, when I snuck back to my room, I thought, tragedy indeed, that innocence, if ever it was, can be stripped away without a warning. I came. By grace or by fate, or by luck or by mercy, I trust the moon will carry your letters safely to me. This flood rescinding will give way to land depending, and like the hand of God gave olive leaves to encourage that ancient family. My dove, with love and sincerity and all that I have to offer, your queen.
Okay. So we have kind of an intro track here. Dude, I was chuckling real quick because of the Huckleberry comment. I legitly just used that today. Just today that I used that saying. Hilarious. My Chuck and his brother were playing the new NCAA that dropped, the video game, and I swung over there, and I'm not very good at those games, so I told Chuck, I was like, hey guys, listen, you need somebody who's really good at getting their ass beat. I'll be your Huckleberry. I haven't heard a whole lot of other people say that. I just quoted from Tombstone, which, funny enough, is chapter 2, Tombstone Love Note. Intriguing. Okay, let's keep it going.
My everything. I found your letter inside of a bottle and didn't know what to say. It was broken further down the cove. Ink spilled hollow, but such a shallow grave. Read your poem like it was life in itself. Start for hope like the waters were too hard to navigate. But it figures that if I was going to build us a home, well, then your heart would find its way. It smelt of sea salt and your father's favorite poison. I'll never forget that day. College ruled lines clouded by the liquor, like a watercolor painting that had absorbed the spectrum with blue and hues thereof, like a piece of bread to absorb the damage. That bottle of Seagram shattered against a seashell and rewrote the story that it would tell to any little girl who might pick up that whitewashed tomb, expecting to hear the ocean, listening for the crescendo and the crash. When at last she'll hear the echoes of your whispers, these bottles will carry my heart home, and the currents will be kind, and my lover's letters will return to me, and our children will grow to find that all is not for naught. And though all is not yet healed, their parents, they worked hard for it, and the storms honored their appeals to see that though my father's drowning, his bottles float above the waves. And though I used to dread the water, its waves will be faithful to crash every day until at last I see your face. Things aren't the same. I've been picking up splinters of lumber for the floorboards and wondering about all of our splintered promises. Like even though we didn't have control over their breaking, oaths like those don't account for much. I loved the beach for the way the breath of God rose out of the deep. And I hated the sand, but I'd tolerate it to hold your hand and watch the sun sink into the sea. Feet buried just beneath the surface. Molten love buried just beneath the surface, erupting. Volcanic, unable to keep beneath the surface that broke like our parents' dormant. Surface level, crater of a marriage that looked more like a coffin every time I read the note that I stole out of my father's casket before it closed. He wrote it to my mother, the woman I never met, that made me feel like I knew her. And this is what it said.
Okay, so we just finished chapter 2. A couple thoughts. I am going to struggle a little bit with this for sure. It's the cadence, and this is something I feel like I really struggle with in stand-up, spoken word, even poetry. I don't feel the passion that they feel, so it kind of comes off like try hard, if that makes sense. Like when they're really trying to hit syllables, and if it's not sounding like, if it doesn't make me feel something inside, it just kind of feels very like forced, if that makes any sense. And I'm getting that a little bit here as well with kind of his cadence and the way he's hitting over the instrumental. There's not really a really good flow, but it definitely is from what I've heard of stand-up spoken word. Jesus, I keep trying to say stand-up. So this is definitely, I don't know if it's going to end well, but we're still going to listen to this as a whole and see how I feel at the other side, because there's plenty of times where I've forced myself to listen to something, and then at the end of it, I really have appreciation for it. So I'm just going to try to let the words flow over me and see if I can kind of pick something up. But yeah, so far, I mean, the words themselves are solid. It's just the cadence. I'm not really feeling the same movement or that he's clearly feeling.
Dear diary,
great
Grandfather's
American
as creaky as his front porch. Loads his shotgun beneath the awning. Spittoon restless for rain. Carpenter's chair against the whistling air. Rocking back and forth, rocking. Snapshot picture worth it. Just like the movies. She said that he loved baseball, and James Earl Jones said he's got God talking inside of his thoughts as he's rounding those bases on his way back home. If you build it, they will come. And baby listens to what the Lord say. I've been getting pretty worn, building for nearly a decade. Perfect world, we shouldn't have been allowed to lose sight of what it means to love wholly. I got a Polaroid hanging on my wall that a friend took of me and my angel. I remember the day like it's something I can touch, but it's stuck in the square between the borders of the film. And I can run my fingers over our faces, but I can't get back to the places we were. You got a pain deep in your bones, son. It compels you forward like you're tied to a slave master's cruel hand. And it's the same pain that drives that oppressor's heart of stone. So you've grown to love the man. You keep pouring yourself out again and again into legible lines through a crooked pen. Yeah, it's painful, but it's familiar. So habit breeds comfort, and I don't know what I'd do without him. So in the early morning, when you've fallen asleep in our home, I drift back into the memories that I've claimed as my own and wonder if tonight will be a night that I'll hang on my wall like I did before we stopped taking photos, out of the habit of being comfortable with not trying it all. In a perfect world, we'll have albums labeled seasons with chapter headings, and we'll staple them to the corkboard that hangs at the foot of the bed. There's longevity in a memory spilt out in pen, and if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then I've written down every one of them. I work hard, scarred, toil through the soil for the youth I see in my friends. But these journals are moments in time, snapshots of our lives, and in retrospect, age is an overexposed photo that the memories can't mend. I know my sweet seductress, and her name is depression. I wrote best beneath that demon's destructive oppression. In those Polaroids, she drove the ink into the canvas like a slave beneath his master's cruel hand. And I hated that whip, but always wondered what I'd do without it. So I grew to love the man. I wept for change. I begged for movement, and the good Lord, he answered my prayers. But you don't know how to breathe easy when you let go of your habits, even if your comforts left you gasping for air. Your time. Grandfather's as creaky as his front porch, scent like oil in the gun barrel, dip can kicked over the railing, sandpaper hands stuck behind thumbtacks on my wall. I got an ache in my chest for every season I miss, and it gets worse when the snow starts to fall. There are butterflies alive in that couple's eyes, a few years since forgotten by all, and sometimes, if the phone starts to ring, I can still hear their wings when you call. But I begged for movement and got what I asked for, and I can picture the answer like it came yesterday. And in the land of the gods, I think that things are timeless, but we are still prone to decay. You know, I still lift up hope of certain smiles in those photos for us when I pray. Time is a cruel lover. She breaks her house apart at its bones. You know, comfort is no good reason for standing still, and idle hands build nothing that you can call your own.
I definitely think this is the best one so far. Easy. The instrumental was really, really nice. But I still gotta say, the cadence I'm not sold on. And it kind of, it's weird because it's like pulling me away from the instrumental. The way he's like trying to. This was nice because the instrumental was a little bit higher than the vocals at times. And so it actually made me pay attention to that instrumental. Whereas on the last two, I was very much distracted by his flow and his cadence. And that was just like background music, if that makes sense. So it didn't really flow really nicely, whereas this one did. So this definitely so far the best one out of the group, the lyricism, the way everything flows. This, I think, was really nice. Chapter 4, Rooster Cogburn in Indian Territory.
God, when the sun sets or escapes, well, there is a painter that paints, and when he paints, we just take in the ripples the paints make when they swell against the textures on the page, and name them waves. Back home, my other spends his nights all alone and thinks it's all about perspective and taking my thoughts captive. He'd be captivated by it. It's all counterfeit. It's all functional saviors that don't function or save you. It's all identity drift. It's all grandiose promises exposed as illegitimate. It's the wail my father seeks and swears by like it'll bring unity to our family. It's the way my mother drove away the same day that she drove the man to drink and called it killing two birds with one stone. Or three, if you count me. I was a seed. She used to say I was the only beautiful thing that ever blossomed from her branches, but I guess it wasn't quite beautiful enough to keep. The gun was cocked and loaded years before I ever watched her leave, but we always saw her finger on the trigger, trembling. I have heard tales of lovers broken by the bullets that we call our parents. For example, in 50 BC, Parthenius of Nicaea penned a Uranian lover into Narcissus' story, who gutted himself with a sword on the man's doorstep. In 8 AD, Ovid found Echo in a mountain crevice, rejected and lonely, until only faint shivers of her whispers remain. To me, this far removed, they are as clear as the day. With that nymph's voice in my head here in Poseidon's domain, for all of the fury with which Aminius and that pagan deity prayed, for all of the fiction children believe and by which we are betrayed, and despite the wind constantly driving and tossing the waves, in all my double-mindedness, I still hear the refrain, this is not your story. When I watch my dad walk starboard, I picture a pirate walking the plank, looking down into the water, terrified, only to see his reflection and fall so madly in love that he dives headfirst into himself and becomes all that I argued with those echoes about what he deserved to be. I picture Nemesis like a John Wayne movie. I know you always love true grit, but at the end of the script, Maddie still doesn't have her daddy back. I hope that one day we'll be able to forgive, but until then, maybe presence is greater than answers or revenge. If Zeus cast my mother out to Hades, she'd still be just as gone as she is now. If you sent ghosts to tell me all of the reasons why I still can't sleep at night, I'd be wide awake, listening. If you can hear me, I'd rather have you than all of my answers.
All right. So again, I like that the instrumental was a little bit higher than the vocals. We're coming close to this halfway point, though. We got 2 more tracks: Tuxedo Black and Traditional Values Worldview, and then I'll kind of give you at least a general idea of where I think this album's going to fall rating-wise, based off the first leg. Let's see what's up. Let's keep this moving. These next 2: Tuxedo Black, and then Chapter 6, Traditional Values Worldview.
Love. While you were weighing anchor, I was weighing my options, thinking why, like knowing would satisfy. But if love is true, then the tide will carry mine till you know I'd drown in the undercurrent before I let myself lose our happy ending. It's the future I miss the most. 17 years from now, I want to be younger and as carefree as I can be. I want you next to me and I want you to reflect all of the best of me. I want the fairy tale, parenthetical porch swing, metaphorically morphing our distorted upbringing into enough of a string to hang by to believe it can be redeemed. I was a man before I got the chance to be a boy. Mother said she wanted neither. Father said I was his joy. He kept on saying things like, enjoy your youth while you can. But when the cancer started taking its toll, the roles reversed, and I cannot fathom what it is like to be eaten alive. Said he had ants beneath his skin, but even then, he'd tell it in a bedtime story. Son, there are colonies of Englishmen with marching orders to see to it that the Indians become just like them. them, dressed up in distinguished garb to cover up their colors and civilize them. Well, he said, in a similar sense, I've got tuxedo black blood cells clothing those that bleed red. If you can laugh along with me, the irony is that I'll be better dressed than I've ever been when I lie to rest here in bed. And you wondered why that Indian fort was the one left standing. I made sure the natives won every time we play that game. Man, I had mud clods filled with rocks that I'd launch at the backs of those backstabbers, but admittedly, as you can imagine, it was a short-lived fame, with all my neighborhood friends bleeding from their heads and everything. Life is pain, Highness. Anyone who tells you different is selling something. It's not true. The Dread Pirate Roberts may have been awesome, but that kind of theology is a hell of a downer to subscribe to. I know there's beauty out there. I'm sure you can see it on the ocean, even if the crew has started to look as white as that whale they're chasing. I've been reading through Moby Dick. 700 pages of Old English and rhetoric, and I can't really understand all of it, but Captain Ahab's looking pretty pale. Be careful. I've been building our treehouse. I hid it far enough away so that when we run, we can stay, and I wrote out the location like a secret on a treasure map. However long your voyage, you'll have a place to call home when you come back. The ladder was nailed to the trunk, and I started hammering the foundation to be sure that we have something to build our future on. How I long for the day that I get to see your face, my strength, my hope, my song.
So even with the things I said prior to, with not being a fan of the cadence or delivery, I do think this one was really well written. Really, really well written. I love the whole vision of the soldiers trying to turn the Native Americans into them, essentially, right? As a civilized society. And then the dad kind of referencing the black blood cells to that whole connection was actually really, really well done, especially carrying on that theme. So yeah, let's go ahead and see what Chapter 6 brings to the table, and this is the middle way of the album. So, Chapter 6, Traditional Values, Worldview.
12 months ago today, we stood in silence, fading further and further away, and refused to say goodbye for fear that the farewell might solidify our fate. I've knocked on every inch of this wooden vessel to keep that fear from coming true. Goodbye is such a definite word, an infinite word, an intimate word. Well, in case you hadn't heard, there are no waterfalls at the edge of the world that fall off into eternity. I'm bringing home scrimshaw to hang from the walls or the branches or the balcony. Father gave me 2 teeth from the beast they harpooned last week, and they've been flensing the creatures at dock while I've been trying to get my feet steady underneath these sea legs. I had a week or more to explore those foreign shores while the crew and the captain knocked at every brothel door. And I imagine I've got scores of siblings on this island, considering the captain is an island unto himself. Give it time. There are 1,000 orphans forgiving their fathers 70 times, 7 times, and I met one of them that week who became a friend of mine. He reminded me of you. Don't be jealous, he wasn't quite as cute, and he didn't have a feathered headdress or the tomahawk that you've been using to build my shelter. God knows I'm gonna need it. Shelter. But we followed a road out to the country that he said he'd known about for years and claimed it was haunted. Boys always tell those tales when they want to put their arms around you. Monster films were made for men on first dates. Well, I went along. The landscape stood frigid, frost painted, and I contemplated the warm blanket that you would have been in all that cold. I saw ghosts every time I opened my mouth to breathe in and out and pretended it was smoke. Like the bubblegum cigarettes that we used to get from the corner store before it died with your dad, and acted like they were opiates before the buffalo dance. The fog was like poetry. Difficult to define, but I am completely indifferent as to what it means so long as we are able to get lost in it. The boy and I met a mystic at the top of the mountain. The mist cut her straight in two, layers over her legs to keep the cold from coming through, but belly up, half a sundress. And she looked at us and said, "Get your head out of the clouds." So with the sun shining down, I've been thinking about what she meant. She gave a speech about separating herself and related it to the whales. Said when the seamen dig their talons in to empty them and burn their substance for oil, remember they had to separate to find their true worth. And with the white dividing her skeleton frame like a personified worldview, it was the cloudiest case for dualism that I have ever heard of. She told us her feet were evil because they'd touched the ground, ears guilty by association because they'd heard the sound, with a mind wicked that wandered and wondered about music, sex, love, and the men in the town below. I don't know. She sounds like my grandparents trying to distinguish between antique Negro spirituals, done damned to hell for a pagan drumbeat and unholy. I just hope that if we're a true reflection of some magnanimous other, I won't have to assume that every inherent longing will find me buried alive. You'd think that if God created everything good, she wouldn't stand up on a mountain proclaiming inanimate objects bad and demonizing the rest of creation like it's the tempo's fault she's stuck alone on a pedestal, cutting herself in half. I want to dance to the music, drink wine to the melody, make love in our treehouse and rejoice over our son with laughter someday. It's gotta come from somewhere. It makes me feel alive. She was kind, but I declined to follow in her footsteps, kiss the boy on the cheek to stick it to the man, so to speak. We left for the great unknown first thing this morning, and if I am going to die at sea, then I am going to be as holistically human as I possibly can be, and believe that I am that way for a reason.
Okay, so I'm digging his casual delivery. It's just when he really punctuates, and it reminds me of white boy poetry. It's very stereotypical. Just I've never really connected to that. Like, it's a art form that I have to remind myself is an outlet, just like every other art form. So it is important. It just does not really connect with me. However, I'm really enjoying certain of the thematic elements here that Levi's bringing to the table. I think his lyricism is really, really nice. It's legitimately just me being stuck on the dislike of, I don't know. I appreciate it as a writer, and I find it more puzzling than anything about I don't know. There's times words get me pumped up, but I don't think it's ever been in a poetic way. And I find a lot of the deliveries of poets. I've been to the slam. Aaron actually did a slam poetry, and it kind of reminded me of this a little bit. But spoken word poetry, that kind of stuff. There's a certain stereotype for sure. And a lot of times some of these poets just fall into it. And it's almost overtly emotional to a point where I struggle to connect with it. And it almost feels alienating to me in a weird way. And again, that could just be something with me, but it's hard for me not to be oh. And I don't really have a problem talking about emotions or anything either. So that's kind of the weird thing. I don't know why I feel that way, but yeah, so far this first leg of the album, I've enjoyed the journey, but I don't think I would rate it very highly. But there's definitely two or three that I'm that was very intricate and made me actually kind of like, maybe I should listen to this again. But I'm not sure how I'm feeling. Let's finish the rest of this album out. But right now I'm right in the middle, probably. Let's say like I'm in the 5 range out of 10. I'm right there in the middle because I really respect the lyricism and the writing. It's just legitimately my own block, I guess you would call it, of not being able to enjoy this style of stuff. Instrumentally, it seems very eloquent, and it is beautiful, but yet it's at certain tracks here, they just don't flow together for me. And so you have this, I can concentrate on the him kind of talking, or I can concentrate on the instrumental aspect. It's one or the other for me. It just isn't like cohesively mixing. But there were a few in there, like I said, that did. I think the last one did, Tuxedo Black, and The Great American Game definitely did, in my opinion. But the orphan theism, orphan religion, right? I believe that's what theism is. Because monotheism is single God, polytheism is multiple gods. So I believe theism is just religion as a whole. So orphan religion. Let's see what this is about.
When I sit on the pier and wait for that black abyss to swell and spit out your letters, my heart rises and falls with the water. And sometimes I just wish it would swallow me. Heaven, the expanse above the tide rising and beneath the rain falling. I swear, sometimes breathing feels just like drowning, stuck here in between. When your bottles float in, there is nothing as beautiful as their dim glow, and my heart longs after them. Their colors catch my eye, dank bourbon or molded green, protecting white sheets painted with calligraphic handwriting, tainted with damp expressions of the bottle's history, but purely you. Purely you. I've been thinking about just what beauty is, but no amount of thinking has added beauty to it. All I know is that it points beyond itself, like I'll long beyond your love notes, like I'll long for you. I've seen the entire spectrum refracting off the ripples beneath my bare feet from the edge of this weathered dock and thought, God, there has got to be more than this. I have no idea what to believe, but beauty pulls me beyond myself like I don't even have a choice, so I know I don't believe in nothing. Where, my love, does the beauty inside of a tree reside? Made up of atoms, identical and colorless, where the light of the sun merely vibrates and waves toward our eyes, striking tissues and moving along nerves like a telephone wire, to their endings like telephones. I do not know. There is no actual color in the atoms of which the tree is composed or in those vibrations. Shape, size, color, touch, and the like are simply the names we call our sensations, and no amount of study can ever bring the notion of beauty to the tree. When I don't know how, help me embrace the mystery. Will you come home? This treehouse won't be that without you.
White whales like black plagues, chapter 8.
Today, the first mate told me that my men intend a mutiny, and that I have condemned an entire crew in search of a fabled Leviathan that we would not have known what to do with had he existed in the first place.
Moby Dick.
But we're sinking, he said, and your daughter is in love with the boy back home, dreaming that she is living his life. She's asleep in the cabin, and if you have even a hint of sobriety in between gulps from that last buoy she'll use to say goodbye, you'll turn this ship around. It's too late. We're drowning. Fathers of daughters just like mine, except theirs will live out their lives on land long after their daddies have died at sea. Some will remember them as noblemen. The rest as having abandoned their roles for a pipe dream, all as good or god-awful as their imaginations allow themselves to believe. I do not know whether I care, or if I could not possibly care less. When we first set sail and pushed off to sea, I stood at the bow looking everywhere but at my legacy. That blue ribbon holding up her hair, eyes locked on the boy that I made her leave, waving. I had been chasing this great white dream for as long as catching him stood the promise that I could substantiate all the reasons I failed my family. Well, I wanted to be a brave man. I wanted to prove to my wife that I wasn't a failure. I wanted to tell my daughter that Daddy always tried, and tried his hardest, tried his best to make it work. His best was always at their expense, and all of the things that I idolized became my captors. Now that it's too late, I know that drifting is a deeper threat than betrayal. No one has to convince you to abandon anything. You just inevitably end up downstream. Maintain your pride and wonder why the world keeps on shifting. Convinced you're still standing in the same place. You never mean to drift away. Maybe if you survive and find this, I was right about one thing. Your mother used to say that I was afraid, but apathy is not the same as escape. And I was never running. It's just that I was never fighting. Indifference sneaks in subtly, and subtleties can kill a man. It'll be of no difference to you. Though if there is a God, know that I will stand before him with no excuse, and I can only assume that he will weep. Tragedy indeed, that innocence, though it never was, could have been.
All right. I mean, honestly, like again, I'm enjoying the storytelling here. I don't know exactly. There's a lot of thematic elements that I'm noticing, like parental drinking, probably to a bad extent, but it's mentioned throughout this LP so far. So I feel like there's a lot of stuff dealing with that, but it's also telling me stories of different parts, like at different times in history. And that, I'll be honest, is what's intriguing me. I love history. And he throws it in there quite a bit. And so I'm really enjoying that aspect of it. Cap gun death. So they're back to the Cowboys and Indians as kids. The cap gun death. Chapter 9.
My lady.
Real quick, we'll go back here a little bit, 6 seconds, rewind that. I do want to add, Chapter 8, actually, the way that guitar was kind of like dancing in there, it actually reminded me of Being as an Ocean quite a bit. They do a lot of this kind of a hardcore sound, but they'll have parts where it kind of has this like airy, atmospheric element, and he's just kind of talking over it, very emotional, like type lyrics, and that kind of really reminded me of that in the last one. But let's go ahead and continue.
My lady, I have combed every inch of this island looking for the final pieces of wood needed to complete our wooded treehouse. I marked the path with cryptic carvings of arrows for right turns and bayonets for lefts, and eventually it drops off into a waterfall. And you can rest assured that if anyone sniffs out our steps, every adult will sneer and bet that no one would be dull enough to jump off and into it. We are growing. But childlikeness is the only way to live, so hand in hand I will stand for nothing less than dives, you hear? Head first, and also backflips. I mean, if you want to backflip, you can backflip. But we're gonna give this whole life everything that we've got, and if that means jumping off really high rocks and into water, so be it. Telling ghost stories with our face-painted friends around campfires, but for the love of God, no acoustic guitars. I hate campfire acoustic guitar guys. And we'll have sleepovers and sleep over one another, and you'll get a chance to see your wishes come true beneath the same stars that I heard you whisper to when I pretended to be asleep all those months ago. We've been playing our games, but they're just not the same without my Pocahontas to rescue me. Someone always plays your Algonquin dad chief, and I'm constantly John Smith getting my head bashed in with the war club. You'll probably laugh when you read this, but you don't hear any of those sounds coming up from Jamestown. Virginia is screwed. it's my time to come to your rescue. If all of our bottles find their way to one another, then surely our hands can too. I've been sawing off branches to make room for our rooms and pitching them together to keep the moisture from coming through. I lifted a sail from in between the logs, nailed an engine to the trunk and stood at the front to balance and keep myself from falling off. Well, it's not perfect, but it'll do. I'm gonna ride our house's roof to come and get you. So the boy set sail and pushed off to sea, stood at the bow looking forward and out into everything, confident. And though he had no idea what the ocean would bring, there are some things that I just know I believe, no matter how irreconcilable they seem.
We're going to keep this rolling. Chapter 10, Light Cushions, is only a minute long. Okay, guys, we have 2 songs left. Chapter 11, Cul-de-sac Colonies, and Chapter 12, Shores and the New World. I'm kind of excited to see what these next 2 bring, especially Cul-de-sac Colonies. That just sounds... It's like he's bridging the modern world with the the old world a little bit. Let's see. Name-wise, I guess they probably had cul-de-sacs back then, but...
My king, I want you to know something that I always admired most about you. No matter how violent the storm, no matter how high the waves, no matter how dark the night, you never let the world get inside of your boat. You kept living when everyone else was sinking, and this whole life never got a droplet toward pulling you down to the ocean floor. Admittedly, this last bottle has room enough for the last of my heart because I drank the last of it myself. Hated it, by the way. Seems my father could have picked a vice that tasted better than rubbing alcohol, but hey, he gave me his last flask when he came downstairs to say that he wanted things to have been different, and I believed him. He said he needed to go down with the ship, but he wished that I didn't, and I believed him. Listen, the want to die is no longer a foreign thought in my mind. A lot of people want to, and I could have died without leaving a note behind. A lot of people do. He started slurring about a memory that he must have caught in the musty air, like a dust particle stuck to the glaze over his eyes. When you were 6 years old, I stood inside of our home at a windowsill, watched you walk back from that boy's house down the street. I was sick, went back to bed before I thought you saw me. When I heard you call out, Daddy, I pretended to be asleep. I I just didn't have the energy to get up and keep you from believing in the ghost that you've seen ever since. He finally fixed his gaze, afraid, and said, "Honey, they've been haunting me, but I hope that you don't have to see them any longer." I believe him. If I can give you anything, let it be that I have not bid my farewell from the ocean, but from the moment I waved goodnight after our first victory as body-painted newlyweds in a cul-de-sac colony, looking forward to morning when our parents would let us sail through the quiet neighborhood streets and the dawn would bring us back together again. Cowboys, or we were Indians, or we were pilgrims. And none of us ever cared that cowboys didn't come here from England. We were just making our pilgrimage toward the sun, searching for freedom and rewriting history for everyone, but mostly us. Maybe I'm still playing our game. I'm just sailing for the new world alone this time. I wish I could come back to tell you what I find, but life has never consulted me before making all of these big decisions, and I stand helpless and hopeless unless the beauty you see in the mystery really points to something. I wish we could explore this together. Let me tell you, to die will be an awfully big adventure, but don't get lost, boy. I want to talk to one another about it someday. It's time to say goodbye. Such a definite word, an infinite word, an intimate word, but it needs to be heard so that you don't have to wonder why the bottle stopped coming. You need closure to move on. You can't sink with me. You get this after I'm gone. And I hope that you can use our treehouse to love someone else once the tide has finally set you free. But don't tell her who you built it for. Make her believe that she's the reason you put all those hours into protecting the purity of that place. I think that eventually you'll believe it too. I truly do not know whether time heals all wounds. It sounds like wishful thinking, but I do know that you can't stop living just because someone else has. My love, don't sink. Don't sink. Your queen.
That was very brooding, and building as well. So I'm wondering how we're going to end this. I imagine kind of on a bang, just the way that whole instrumental was really felt like it was building for sure. It's got to, guys. Last track, let's go.
Listening, we always talked about taking that voyage together. We didn't want to die in our sleep like so many people wish for. Or at least she didn't. She thought it sounded boring, and even though dying scared me, I wanted to be brave enough to engage in the fantasy. We decided we'd go out defending our treehouse against the separatists. It was inevitable once they'd finally discovered us kissing traitorously beneath their cootie-infested boys-only headquarters. We'd be capgunned to death. She thought it was romantic, like Romeo and Juliet, she'd say. And I'd say okay, but wonder like I always do if anyone's actually heard that story. I finished our treehouse with the few scraps of dead wood that I was able to drag back to land. It seemed fitting after our whole lives were broken homes for all of those shipwrecked pieces to complete one. It's beautiful. I feel like she might have called it redemption. For For a split second, as I watched the last of her craft fall beneath the surface of the water, I thought that we are all only stones in the ocean, and maybe it didn't matter that much whether we lived or died, but she was right about taking thoughts captive. I am lonely, and I can't reconcile loneliness with meaninglessness, because like beauty, it leaves me wanting for more. She is still a decision that floats out like debris on ripples that began at her stone's throw. You were a mountain to me. Your earthquake leaves me trembling, and I long beyond your beauty, past your breaking and out into whoever is responsible for your new beginning. Maybe he knows the end. When you first set sail and pushed off to sea, I stood on the shore looking forward, tongue-tied and stubbornly, holding tears behind my eyelids, because no matter how much I liked you, girl, there was still a bit of boy in me, and I wasn't about to weep with you staring back, smiling. I guess this is goodbye. I knocked on every inch of this wooden tree house to keep that word away, but goodbye, despite all of my efforts, remains. This is the last of our bottles. If it ever makes its way out to the new world, know that it was unending love that fueled the moon's magnetic pull to pursue you through the death that threatened to conquer it. And it is beautiful. It cannot fail. It cannot fail. It cannot fail! Definitely, infinitely, intimately, your king.
All right, guys, that was the album. Trying to debate whether I should start with my negatives. Yeah, let's get the negatives out of the way, and then we'll end on positives. So, ouch. All right, most of my negatives are probably due to me just being too thick and not getting the art here. Just to be totally honest with you guys, it wasn't that I despised it, but again, it all kind of just sounds similar to things I've heard already, especially cadence-wise. It's something that it all just kind of blends together for me. That's why I said, like, white boy poetry, it seems very, like, it has a sound to it, and it's not really my thing. Like, I get more of the emotions in, like, music and how they're expressed through singing, but when people are just saying words and they're saying them with a attempt of impact, and if it doesn't land right, it can come off, like I said, slightly cringy to me, and weirdly kind of alienating. But for the most part, he didn't really fall into a cringy feel, except for a few tracks where I was like, I don't know. I think one of my biggest issues probably was, other than that, stuff, musically, it felt like a score for a movie, like. But the difference between a movie and a spoken word thing like this, it's very much the missing visual elements, the cinematic elements, because you're watching this unfold and the music just seamlessly enters that and it matches it, right? Where you have him speaking, he would flow, but it also was like separate. It almost was like two people in a lobby, one person playing a piano or the other instruments, and then him off to the side doing his spoken word, Yes, I just wanted to make sure I was I keep getting confused. Um, and so it didn't really sync up with me. It was either I paid attention to the instrumental, I was like, oh, that's pretty, but then I was missing the words, and going back to that, it just didn't flow right in my ears. Um, but positives, I really, really was impressed with the lyricism and the thematic elements that were really woven in here. I thought that was probably the most interesting concept or even idea here. But again, I'm not trying to crap on anybody's poetry. I know a lot of times poetry is very personal. It's just if for some reason it does not strike with me, I just sit here and I'm just like I don't get this comparatively to music or other forms of art. Just doesn't click. It was actually kind of funny because I feel the way he felt towards guitar guys. Like I'd much rather listen to a guitar guy sing out of just random shit than listen to someone doing spoken word. Uh, and I think that's a disconnect from the emotions there. Like they feel very passionate about it because of a lot of times they're pulling from, things in their history or their past. And I understand that. It just, for me, for some reason, doesn't strike home. But without those strong lyrics here, and I, honestly, like the way the poetry flowed was nice. Um, but I'm probably, to be honest, was going to be for a whole album. It's probably going to be a 4. I'm going to go flat 4 here. I didn't hate this by any means, but I would say as a whole, it wasn't great for me. It was kind of bad. However, I will say there's like 4 tracks on here that I really, really respect enough that I'd go back and listen to them. And a lot of those were in the beginning, towards the beginning. The Great American Game was fantastic. Tuxedo Black, Traditional Values, Worldview was nice. There was another one later on that I really enjoyed too. White Whales and Black Plagues, maybe. It might have been Orphan Theism. But yeah, I think as a whole, this isn't just, it's not a genre for me. But I want to do, my buddy's really into poetry. Shout out to my boy Aaron. And I always try to at least give it a shot. My thick noggin don't get it, I don't think, guys. And I want to be clear here. I'm definitely not shitting on Levi the Poet either, because I think that if this was done, like, let's be honest, the rating is there, but just my initial feeling there. But I think as, like, with those lyrics there, you could easily say this a 5 or 6 in that range. And if you're really into this kind of genre, it probably could be higher, because he really did. There wasn't parts that I'm like, oh, that flowed really clunky, which you get a lot of times with someone, when they're doing poetry and they're not taking a lot of time on it, or they have even, and they're just, not, just some of this stuff doesn't flow right to me. But there wasn't a whole lot of issues there. It was just typically the cadence and the delivery I found kind of stereotypical. So yeah, I think there's songs on here that are definitely in like a 6, 7 range, or not songs, but tracks that are in a 6 or 7 range for me. But there were a lot of like 4s here for me as well, just to be totally honest with you guys. So I think as a whole, it's probably in the high 4s, probably like 4 or 6, 4, 7 in that range. But yeah, shout out to Levi the poet. If you guys did enjoy this, please, please, please go out and support the artist. Go like them on their socials. If they don't have socials and they do live shows, make sure you grab a couple tickets, especially if you can afford that, or merch. But it's not easy in our economy right now. I get that, but I always try to encourage, go out and support the artists you love. Even if this wasn't for me, if you enjoyed this, you should make sure you try your best to support it, right? On Pyro Slaves Music, shout out to my boy Aaron for this suggestion. Definitely something different that I haven't, like, I think I've come around to like checking out spoken word maybe like in a track or two. I think it's like K Tempest is the one artist I was thinking of that I really enjoyed, kind of this spoken word like rap flow. London is Burning or something like that. It was fantastic. But yeah, I'm super, super, super picky with this genre. So it is what it is. But yeah, I appreciate Aaron for sending this my way. It's nice to check out something different. Really cleanses the palate. Peace out, Girl Scout. Pyro Slays music.